everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 162. Today I'm going to talk about Locomotive Werks. This is a reprint of a game that came out probably 10 years ago or so. Reprint by Queen. They did a Kickstarter for this. I recently did a review of German Railways, and I got this one and German Railways in the package. And this game plays 3 to 5 players. It does take about 2 hours to play. Now, what kind of game is this? It looks like a train game, and it has some things in common, just minor things in common with sort of your 18XX style of game. Now, stop right there. That's not an 18XX game. It's really nothing like it. It has some certain characteristics, like the idea of obsoleting technologies as you sort of upgrade to better trains and better locomotives. But it's got some really interesting mechanisms with dice and markets, and how the markets sort of fluctuate over time, and how the market kind of demands more and more and better improved technology. So in the game, you're basically buying these factories and producing these different locomotives. There'll be passenger trains and commercial trains and different colored trains, and you'll be basically trying to play until somebody hits $300, and then whoever has the most money at that round wins. Now, I will say that the first time that I played this, I was bored to tears. Probably because I didn't understand the idea. But after playing it again, I enjoyed it, and I will show you now how it works and come back and tell you more about what I think. Okay, so I got the board set up here. You can see there's a whole mess of dice. I've initially rolled 3 dice here for this sort of starting locomotive there, and then 1 dice here that goes in the middle. This is considered initial orders, and then these are existing orders over here. And think of them as sort of, each dice is sort of like a contract for a certain number of the locomotives here. So maybe you have a dice here with 3, and this contract really wants to be filled and basically have 3 of this type of train sold to it. So you're going to kind of start buying trains here at the top left. Now, depending on the number of players, you may start with that train already in front of you. Then you're going to start with a different amount of coins here. You can see that in the middle. And then you're going to be buying and producing trains going back basically in a clockwise manner around here. And you can see there are different colors. There are green ones, which are passenger trains, and red ones and yellow ones, and then blue ones. Now, each of these stacks does not have the same amount of cards. The stacks in green are going to have the most. There's going to be plentiful. Now, the blue stacks, which are like special locomotives, there's only 1 of them in this stack here, and then there's only 1 other type of train here, then there's only 2 of these. So if you're playing, like, say, 4 or 5 player game, not everybody's going to be able to get every train. And then there's a little bit more, yellow and red, but not as many as the green. So to start the game initially, you're just going to shuffle up the turn order cards here. So if you have 4 players, you shuffle them up, deal them out, and then you're going to go and play in that order. After the first round, you're going to see whoever has the least amount of cash, and they're going to get the lowest, so they're going to be able to go first in the next turn if they have the least cash. And if there's a tie, you basically keep the same relative position. But again, basically, whoever has the least amount of cash is going to go earlier in turn order. So we're going to determine turn order, hand out starting cash. We're going to roll some die. We're going to have 3 dice here for the first train and 1 for the second train. And then you're going to start the game. So the first thing that players are going to do is they can possibly buy a locomotive factory. And that's really what these cards are factories. Now, like I said, you may start the game actually off with this factory here in front of you. Now, you can never have more than 1 of the same type, so I can never have more than 1 of this kind of train and produce that. So this is the cost here. So you can see as you get along, here's the last train you'll get. This is going to cost you $56. This one's starting one costs you $4. So if you want to buy this, you'll buy this and take it, and then you're going to take one of these little tokens here, and these are double-sided with a 1 and a 2. So you take and put 1 here, and this is basically the production capacity for this particular type of locomotive. So when you buy a factory, you can already start off producing 1 of those types. So you can only buy these, and this is optional to buy these. You don't have to buy one of these. You can only buy them if there's existing orders that happen here, and if there's cards left. If there's no cards left, then you can't buy it. But if there's existing orders or initial orders. So to start the game off, we've set up 3 contracts here, basically 3 sets of orders that we can try to fill later in the turn for this. So these exist, and you can buy one of these. And again, you can't buy more than 1. Or you can buy one from the initial orders here. So if somebody wanted to be a little bit frisky here and buy the next generation sort of train here, they could pay 8, and they would buy that. Now what's going to happen here is when that happens, this initial orders die is going to move down to the existing orders of that particular locomotive. And then we're going to take and roll a die. So we'll roll this die here. We've got a 5, and that's going to go in the initial orders of the next tray. So I should show you sort of a close-up here. So you can see you've got, for these different train types here, the existing orders box, and this is going to be different for each of the trains. So you can see this yellow one has 3 boxes here, where 3 dice could be. The green one has 4. And then the initial orders box, there's only going to be 1 of these underneath each train. So there's sort of a central box there. So as you are buying more and more trains and getting more upgrades of the technologies, this initial orders box is going to die is going to move up in these boxes. And you've got your customer base boxes here, and I don't really like the name of that, customer base. It seems to me this is more like fulfilled orders that then possibly move back over to existing orders. But as you sell your trains, your locomotives, you're going to move dice over to here, and these are going to fill up here. So you got each of the trains has these 3 sections: existing orders, initial orders, and then the customer base on that side. So after everybody's had an opportunity to buy a new factory, then we're going to go into the production capacity phase. So as you buy these factories here, or these cards, you're going to put them in front of you. And like I said, they come with 1 production capacity on them. So let's say I just bought this red one here. So I would have this on there like so. Now at this point, we can increase the capacity, the amount of actual items and product that we can make. So the way that you do that is if you look at this gear here, you can see how much it's going to cost for the different types to upgrade your production capacity. So if I wanted to upgrade this one, to be able to produce 2 trains, then I could pay 4, and I could flip that to a 2. Or if I wanted to pay, 8, I could, put 2 more on there. So you can buy as much as you want. So if I wanted to pay 2 here, I could put 2 on there. Now the other thing that you can do is you can actually upgrade your production capacity off of older trains. So as we buy, or as the whole team or the whole group buys, better technologies, these older ones are going to become obsolete. So you're going to want to move this production capacity sort of up your chain here. So if I had 2 here, and see the cost of these is 2 and the cost of these is 4, what I can do is I can pay the difference. So let's say for some reason I wanted to move 1 off of here. I could pay $2 to move 1 from here to here, which is a little bit cheaper than paying $4 to initially do that. So I could pay $2, flip that back to a 1, and then I could move this one up to here. Now if I had another one, let's take a really high one, which is a little unrealistic, but if I wanted to move this one from a 2 up here to a 14, I'd pay 12, and I could basically move this one up to here like so. So you're going to want to do this as the game progresses to basically sort of get out of these earlier markets that are no longer really necessary. And just for now, I'll explain this in a little bit more detail, but for now, the main thing you want to consider is that trains of a certain type will obsolete older trains of the same type. So green ones will obsolete other green ones, and red ones will obsolete other red ones. So as people get the better versions of these passenger trains, nobody's interested in buying these old ones anymore. So after everybody's upgraded their production capacity, then we're going to go into basically producing and selling these. And also let me pause here and say that everything is going to be done in turn order, and you're going to really need to keep an eye on what everybody else is doing, what they're going to produce, what they're capable of producing. If you're going to go earlier in turn order, you need to keep an eye on what others coming after you might produce, and you're going to need to keep an eye on the market, and that's dictated by the dice. So let's take a look at the dice, and we'll talk about how you're going to produce and sell these. So if we look here, we'll look at the early game status here. So basically we've got now 3 contracts here, and then 1 contract there on the red one. And anything that has dice in the existing orders boxes, not the initial orders, but the existing order boxes, is going to want to buy that type of locomotive. So let's take an example here. I've got one of these trains here, and let's say I had 3 on here. So this is going to work a little bit differently than I think people are going to be used to. So if I can produce 3 of this type of train, what I'm going to do when it comes to my turn, if these are the dice available, I'm going to take these 3 here and move them just above my card to show that I've produced and then I've sold them. Now I have to use this die here because I have a perfect match of the amount that I can produce that one of these contracts once fulfilled. So I'm going to take this die, I'm going to move this over, and so it's going to go in sort of this fulfilled area, this customer base area. I fulfilled 3 of them, and I'm going to get this amount times however many I sold. So in this case I would get $3. Not too exciting, but it's the first train. So I'm going to do that and get $3. Now let's say I was a different player. For just argument's sake, we'll keep the same amount. They're able to produce 3. I already stole the 3 there, so that moved over. Now I've got 3 to produce. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and move the 3 off. I'm going to look at the highest die, and I'm going to reduce it by 3. So I'm going to take the 6 and turn it down to a 3, and I'm going to get my $3 because I sold 3. Now let's say I come along to another player and they actually can produce a whole bunch. They spend a lot of money on producing, and so they can actually produce 6. So this is the current state. They have more than anything. So basically, if you match a die, you've got to sell to that die and move that die over. If you have less than the highest die, you're going to take the highest die and reduce it by that amount. Remember, we had the 6, I had 3, so we're going to reduce the 6 by 3, and now we have this. So now I've got 6 here. So I would take and move these off, but I can't fulfill all of this. So I'm going to move this one over like so. I'm going to get my $5, so 5 times that. And then just for argument's sake, I'm going to split this one. So I'm going to have 1 there and then 1 back here. So I haven't sold all of them. I've got 1 left over. And so what's going to happen on a turn is in player order, you're going to go through each of your types of railroad production and sell for each one of these. So, and you're going to start with the lowest to the highest. So let's say I came along, I did that, and then I also had a red one here. So I would sell this one, I would move this one up, and I've got a perfect match of 3 in this case. Just for argument's sake, I move that over, I get 3 times 2, so I would get $6. And then we're going to come back around. So if anybody has any lingering production on their train cards here, they can go ahead and resell that. So let's say we came back to the player that had 6 here and they still had 1 left over. They can take and sell that 1. So we'll just discard that and flip that back to a 2 here. And then they can take 1 off of here, and so we'll reduce this by 1, and then they'll get another $1. So you're going to go around the table. Everybody's going to sell once in each of the train cards that they have, and then we're going to go back around in turn order, and then if anybody has anything left, if there's any dice left, then they're going to sell again. And then when you're done, you're just going to take all of these and put these back on your card, because you don't actually lose them. It's just your production capacity. So on the next turn, you're going to be able to produce this amount again, or more if you've upgraded it. Now what's going to happen is after everybody's sold, then you're going to have to pay taxes on the amount of income that you have. So everybody's going to look, and you're going to pay 10% income rounded down. So if you haven't hit $10 yet, you don't have to pay anything. And then you're going to pay that back in. And then we're going to determine the turn order based on whoever has, the least amount of cash, like I said before. And then we're going to redetermine the markets here. So let's take a quick example of what we might do here. So the green one, let's say this is the only type of this passenger train, the green chain left. So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to take the customer base dice here, take and roll those, and then we're going to add these back over to the left-hand side here. So we've kind of reset the market. We've got a new market for the next turn. Then we're going to look over here at the red one. The red one has 1 fulfilled, so they're going to go like this, do that, and then since they haven't hit their max amount of contracts or existing customers, you're going to take another die and add that every turn. As long as it hasn't been obsoleted, you're going to be able to add that. So on the next turn, maybe we don't sell any of these or something, we're going to take and add another die from the pool and add it back there. And then once we hit the max, then we're set. So you're going to go through all the different types of production and railroads here and do that and reset the markets every turn. Now let's talk a little bit about obsoleting and when a train gets old and how that's going to affect this last phase of the game here. So this is sort of the curmudgeonly crucial part of the game. So what's going to happen now? Let's say we've got the green one here. We'll just use that as an example. So we've got the green one. Everybody's been buying these. But now the game has progressed and somebody has purchased the first one of these level 2 passenger green railroads. Then at that point, the generation that is a single generation older than the current one, so this is generation 2, this is generation 1. When that happens, we're going to start removing dice out of this sort of the pool of dice up here. So basically each turn, instead of adding a dice, where a newly formed production was happening, like this red one. Now we're going to start sort of slowly obsoleting this one. We're going to take one of the dice out of the question here, and then the next turn we'll take another one out. Finally, we might move down here to the 3rd generation green one here. And so now the second one will become old, and then the one that is 2 generations older, in this case generation 1, that is now obsolete. So any dice that may or may not be in there are going to get removed, and then nobody can buy that anymore. So that's pretty much the game. It seems very simple, very dry. You're basically going to be possibly buying new technologies, upgrading the capacity of technologies, possibly moving your capacities and upgrading your production capacities here from older generations to newer generations. And you need to be really smart in a couple of areas here, and I'll talk just quickly about it before going back to the review. the turn order is going to be hugely important in this game. And not necessarily from the fact that it's better to go first or last. It's more from the perspective of, okay, I see that Billy over there, he's going to be able to fill that whole 5 here. So he's got 5 of these. He's going before me. He's going to be able to produce those. So there's no reason for me to produce a whole bunch because, you know, there's only a contract of 3 and 2 there. So I don't need to produce 6. You know, that's kind of a waste. I'm not going to be able to make money on that this turn because, you know, I want to save that money for next turn or something like that to get more stuff. Now, you may still want to do that because if nobody else is into red and you've got a 5, you can fulfill the 3 and the 2. So you have to keep that kind of stuff in mind and really keep all that into consideration as far as like when you're going to upgrade out of these earlier markets here. So what can happen is a lot of people maybe start moving towards the red one and people have left the green one. Meanwhile, we're still rolling dice and repopulating that market, you know, every round. Nobody's really quite caught up to the second generation. So I could go kind of heavy here and get a couple of turns of production out of, you know, this older model here. So it becomes really a question of when do I start to get out of, you know, these older models and start hedging my bets that the newer ones are going to come up and starting to really save money and move along. And that also can become sort of part of why you might upgrade a little bit earlier. You maybe haven't got the full amount of production out of some of the earlier ones, but you really want to start obsoleting somebody because they're really going to start raking in, you know, a couple of turns worth of production. So you want to buy that, make them old, and then, you know, put them slowly out of business in some respects, or force them to spend, you know, to upgrade their capacity. And the other thing to keep in mind is if you look at these, they don't all have the same amount of available order slots or dice slots here. So the blue ones are pretty minuscule, but not everybody's going to be able to get into that. So if you can kind of get a monopoly on a certain type or approach as you move up here, you can really do well for yourself. And then on the other hand, you don't want, you know, to let somebody do that. So it becomes pretty interesting that way. Okay, hope you enjoyed the overview. Like I said at the beginning, just to give you sort of a quick sort of impression of the game, I thought the game was pretty dry and boring the first time I played it, but it's kind of been growing on me, so I'm kind of interested to see some of the, you know, different things you can kind of do as far as, you know, muscling other people out of certain rail lines and things like that. The dice they seem to be kind of kept in check. They're not too bad. I mean, you can get screwed. Like there's the first blue one. The first blue one only has 1 dice slot. So as soon as that one becomes old, it basically is obsoleted because you're going to remove that die anyway. But you've only got 1 die roll that you can count on being able to sort of sell to. So if you roll a 1 or really low, excuse me, then you're kind of screwed on, you know, being able to sell a lot of those. So the ones that don't have a whole lot of die rolls, you can get a sort of monopoly on, but you're kind of putting all your eggs in one basket in some senses there. So I like that aspect. I kind of ended up liking that, even though I got screwed by it. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So I think, you know, not everybody's going to like this kind of game. If you're an economics guy, train guy, it's a nice different take on some of the aspects of an 18xx type of thing. There's no options in there, but I don't think the game really need it. And, you know, basically play till $300 and then whoever has the most wins, and then the game's over. So it's cool. I don't know. The dice is interesting because it's like sort of 18xx the dice game or something. It adds an interesting aspect. I don't feel like I'm getting, like I said, after I got used to it, I don't feel like I'm getting hosed by the dice. But it adds a certain level of excitement to it. It's like, ooh, you know, heck yeah. You know, I've got a bunch of these, and I'm like the only guy in this, and I rolled 6s across the board. So, but everybody can buy most of the rail lines. And like I said, the ones that there's a lot of cards for, a lot of available factories, that one also you're going to roll a lot of dice for. So there's more demand for passenger trains than special trains and things. So it's neat, and I would recommend people that, you know, are into economic games to definitely take a look at it. So thanks.